It's my very great pleasure to introduce our two panellists today who are going to talk to us about some of the impacts on the organisation that digital change is happening. First of all, Joe Irons, who is Chief Customer Officer at Paperchase. He has a great background and is a real veteran in brand marketing, CRM, multi-channel and e-commerce. Seasoned and experienced practitioner in brand marketing, CRM, e-commerce and multi-channel, and he has worked for brands such as New Look, Monsoon, Accessorize, The Body Shop, and as well as Paperchase, where he is now on the board. So he has had responsibility for online and offline during his career, and is a great person to sort of bring that experience to board today. Secondly, we have David Williams, Senior Director, Digital Omnichannel EMEA at Deckers Brands, and you probably know them for the UGG brand being in their stable, amongst other sort of 9 or 10 other really great brands. He's also on the advisory board to the E-Retail Industry Association, IMRG. Previously, he worked for Charles Tyrwhitt and Bertelsmann, as well as setting up the online channel for luxury sneaker brand Bowers and Wilkins. He's currently responsible for digitally driving sales and improving digital experiences for all of the channels, online, retail and wholesale, whilst at Deckers, and he owns the e-commerce P&L for those brands. So, with no further ado, let us kick off. So just a baseline where we're going to start. At Practicology, we hear a lot of retailers ask the question, quite a sort of future-driven question, what does my organisation look like when 50% of my sales come online? And the predictions that they're making is that we're going to get to that level of online growth within 3 years, 5 years. Now, I do appreciate that the answer often depends, but I'd like to open by saying to you both, from your experience and the brands that you work for now, what do you think your trajectory of online sales, be they in-store, mobile, desktop, or yet to be discovered mediums, is going to be as we go into the future? David, do you want to start?
Okay, is that on? Yeah. I'm going to say that it depends, obviously. Peter, I think it really depends on how you're structuring your business, really. I mean, my job title specifically now is beyond the e-commerce, beyond just the e-commerce channel. It's about digitally influenced sales in stores. So whether it's click and collect, click and reserve, endless aisle, shipping from your store, ship from store, probably doing same day delivery at some point, and then you start thinking, well, what is an online sale? So it's very difficult. I also am looking at the potentials with wholesale partners of supporting them on their online channels. So it becomes very, very blurry. It also depends on your business and how you're really considering the size of your retail store fleet. So I find the percentage thing really difficult to manage. What I'm hoping to do is I help grow all channels, and it's customer centric. So whether it's our wholesale partners, whether it's our retail stores, and whether it's our online presence. Obviously, the other questions that are coming up more and more is around your store mix and what is your store for as well. Obviously retail, some companies are having struggles with retail stores, some are closing, some are consolidating, some are considering whether they open more concessions. So yeah, I'm giving you a really bad answer here, but I think it's becoming more and more blurred, and that percentage of online sales as a kind of question, I'm hoping over time it's going to disappear. But if you want a number, probably about 25%.
I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of the blurriness and what
Throw it out there.
No, but what we're really here to talk about is actually how customer shopping behaviour is changing what we see. Would you agree with that in terms of how you perhaps forecast where growth is going to come from and whether channels actually matter or not, Joe?
Yeah, I would. I mean, at Paperchase, we were fairly slow in terms of getting online. We only launched 6 years ago. So we're in a kind of rapid catch-up phase at the moment, and growing very nicely, but a long way to go. As far as the mix goes, it's really difficult to measure because for us, we've got our business growing at say 40% compound growth each year online, but we never seem to catch up because we're opening sort of 15, 20 stores a year. So our mix is actually kind of very static because we've got significant runway in terms of store opening in the UK. So, 5 or 6% for us, albeit from a profitability point of view, which is probably much more important, it's much more significant for us. So, in terms of the numbers, I guess fashion, it feels like 15, maybe moving to 20 odd, albeit I think, growth for anybody with all the stuff around Brexit and so on over the next couple of years, it's probably going to be tough.
Congratulations to being the first person to mention that so far today. We've all been very politely ignoring it. But I'm just going to take that. And so in the fact that we're all facing massive growth, future projected growth coming from this thing called online, and perhaps more modest yet still difficult to achieve growth targets coming from our sales channels, what do you believe that means for the organisation? Because growth in the last 4 years has often meant us looking out, where we're investing in technology and platforms and mobile and sites and new stores. But actually now we're seeing increasingly businesses are looking inwards to their organisation. Joe, you first. What kind of challenges are you seeing?
Well, I'd say we were slow into the game, and when I arrived, we kind of had a sort of challenge. We wanted to get to 10 million very quickly. And so we took the decision at that time, sort of 3-4 years ago, that we did want to take quite a siloed approach to it. So I kind of had a team, we were very focused on the channel, and it was a small bunch of people making decisions around e-com and growing it quickly. We've now got to a level, and it's much more now about making it part of the wider fabric of the organisation. So if you're a buyer or a merch in Paperchase, you absolutely need to be thinking about online. And that's taken probably a year to get people kind of thinking about it and talking about it, because historically we've been quite siloed with it.
And in fact, a year might seem quite quickly compared to perhaps a predominantly wholesale organisation where the dynamic is different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've been at Deckers Brands for 6 years. There was no online business when I joined. I was just talking about it earlier, actually. We had a distributor in the market. We took it over, and I was very interested to see Martin's slide up there he had earlier of the three different, I had to build up, I had three years, I'd say, of building up a channel, within a bigger, wider business, and dealing with the wholesale side of the business where there's a lot of channel conflict, you're stealing sales, you're not doing incremental growth, all those challenges were there, and it took, it's very interesting to see the second circle that you showed there of the I'm suddenly getting the Omnichannel in my title kind of thing. It's exactly what's happening to me. Is suddenly we want to be customer centric, but we don't really know how. So we were having those conversations. What does it mean to be customer centric? And it's really around people and processes and trying to align the channels. So we've gone through some of that challenge now, and that comes around, as you say, buying and merchandising, looking more about the functions in the business and which ones need to go across all the channels. So whether it's buying and merchandising, inventory management, looking at the processes you have around that, looking at those cross-channel services that everyone is implementing or has implemented, click and collect, click and reserves, endless aisle. So we've started to move down that journey, but we need to move further along that journey now.
One of the tipping points for us, I mean, some other retailers in the room may be doing this already, but we have a fantastic store estate. We have 130 odd stores. They're the best people to promote our online offer. So we took the decision that whatever we sold online, the store manager would be bonused on, which kind of sounds, challenging. It was a difficult sell to the FD at the time, but it meant our store colleagues were actively promoting the website because they knew it's part of their bonus at the end of the day. So that was kind of a tipping point for us.
And how much do you think that your role as Chief Customer Officer enabled that to happen? Because increasingly we're having to work cross-functionally in order to affect some of the changes that you're talking about.
I think it just helps the business focus on the customer rather than the channel. So that's where the conversation begins. Ultimately, it doesn't matter if the sale comes in store or it comes online, just get the sale. And we've kind of taken that mentality. Now, at the moment, we're in a fortunate position. We've got good online growth and we've got positive like-for-likes in stores. So, that's working for us. So that's the kind of thing that we come back to. We also use Net Promoter across both channels. So that's our kind of key soft metric, if you like, outside of sales, in terms of measuring how we're getting cut through with customers.
And David, from your position as well, so you also have a role that spans multiple channels. And we spoke earlier, Martin spoke about Chief Customer Officer. You're actually responsible for bringing some of the experience across channels. How important and how much do you see that role? How significant do you see that in the future in order to be able to achieve the growth that's projected?
It very much goes on what Joe's been saying as well, and we have the similar sort of thing. around the soft sales being attributed to the stores. In my world, with a wholesale business and an e-commerce and a retail business, at the moment it's very easy to get that across from the retail stores and the e-commerce world, easy because it's your own stores, it's your own brand situation. You can again have an NPS, shared goals. It's much easier to do. I would say that the things that mine was showing and the general things we're still trying to get right at the moment. I would like to differentiate between experience and service. It's services that we're trying to get across there and consistent across there to give a good consumer experience. I still consider click and collect a service, click and reserve a service, endless aisle as a service. The experiential stuff, I don't think very few brands have got completely right. It is a bit harder with a wholesale business, with different selling periods, different KPIs that drive them. And a traditional mentality of a sales guy is very much driven around how many can I sell in my channel to that particular retailer, and that's my next challenge, is to try and find ways to support those retailers, get more involved with those retailers in their digital presence and the consumer-centric elements to it to help them grow that, and then hopefully we'll bring them on board as well, because that's one of the more difficult things in my job.
I think KPIs is a really fundamental area to cover, because they are very channel-specific and channel-centric at the moment, and perhaps not so customer-centric. How do you see, or how do you think you can affect moving your KPIs or changing them in the future, Joe?
I think one of the things that we've seen over the last couple of years, as we've properly sort of embraced web, and then on top of that we've launched our reward program, is just the sheer volume of data that we've got. And so we're still kind of wrestling with that, and I'm not pretending that we've got it nailed, but we really try to focus on certain customer groups and look at their kind of lifetime spend. And we look at that across stores, we look at it across web, and we look at kind of customers that are shopping both. We know if we can get them shopping stores and web, they're our most valuable for both channels. So that's kind of where we tend to focus on that.
Which leads some interesting questions about the skills required to help enable and affect this change. What skills do you find as leaders of your teams you're in demand, and how easy or not is it to fill them?
Personally, the hardest role that we've had to recruit is, and we haven't been successful, is trying to get somebody that can deliver data to the business in a kind of meaningful and actionable way. It's kind of the hardest challenge that we've had, is to kind of take all the huge amount of data and make it interesting for people. It's obviously where we work with yourselves. So.
Yes, we work with you on that. What about you, David? Is that the same, or any other areas?
There's the wealth of data now, and when you're trying to break out of there's enough in the e-commerce channel to worry about. You start having to consider other channels, getting the people there who are, it's hard enough getting a data analyst for a web analyst to do that, let alone somebody who can do omnichannel data analysis. We do analyse the customer data. We have our own. That area I'm not too worried about, obviously, because as was talked about earlier, single customer view is getting a little bit easier to get your head around within our own channels. Within wholesale, that's a different matter completely. Where we're finding now, and part of my remit is experiential stuff in stores now. I have much more responsibility in stores for digital activities. Is that blurring of the roles that go into retail and online. And what we're very much moved to an agile methodology, product owner of that experience. So, because unlike e-commerce, if you're rolling out an endless aisle application in store, you can't test and measure it and then just go for the best one. You have to have it right. They have to understand retail store operations. If you're doing click and collect, they have to have some understanding of how a store works. Those sorts of roles now we're actually recruiting one at the moment, so if anyone knows anyone. It's blurring the boundaries of where those people come from, because we've been looking at people who've worked in retail operations in an omnichannel world, or we're looking at people who've worked in technology companies who are used to working with agile product development. So, and there's no clear-cut person to get for that. But I'm finding that I'm seeing more of that kind of skill and role becoming more valuable over time.
I think for things like click and collect and order in store, e-com people are great at delivering that kind of web front end bit. Retail operations people are much better at delivering the kind of what happens in store. So, that really does need to be a collaboration.
And how, if there is a a sort of a way of making that successful? Is there a magic formula for it? How do you try and enable projects, large-scale projects like that, to be landed successfully so you can deliver a great customer experience? How do you make the functions work well together?
It's a good question. I don't know if I've got a great answer on it. I think it is just everybody having a shared view of what the customer wants and what the vision is for a project. It's as simple as that. I think it's just engaging people.
We, when we launched our Click and Collect, Click and Reserve, we, as you said, you know, e-commerce, there was that kind of this channel conflict. So there was that, oh, well, e-commerce are trying to do something else and do Click and Collect, which is their sale in our store. So we had to deal with that issue. But the ultimate thing of that, delivering that product, was actually the people who are going to own it are going to be the stores, and the same for Click and Reserve. So we actually gave that project, or the ownership of that, the sponsors of that, to be the retail operations team. And that, by nature, brought a cross-functional, cross-channel team to work together and give a good understanding of giving us a better product as well.
We had a new one that happened in our business last week. We trade on ASOS, so we do a nice business with them. And as a brand, we have very small returns, probably less than 1%. But we started to get some ASOS returns into our stores. Now, ASOS is a wholesale model for us, and from a store perspective, you're getting a return from ASOS. What do? You know, that's kind of a difficult one to kind of work through. I mean, the obvious answer is you've got to do what's right for the customer, but in terms of that whole sort of reverse logistics piece, it's very difficult.
But actually interesting to hear you say you've got to do what's right for the customer, because it may seem obvious, but I think there are brands that struggle with that still. So in terms of sort of summary, what I'm hearing is that we actually have to understand what our customer wants and to put them first, to make sure that we have the right teams and skills within our ability to get them in place, and to really improve the cross-functional working and communication between our teams so that we're landing our initiatives well and delivering that experience.